Hello friends, back with two more rolls of black and white film on the Rollei 35. So I started out with a montage right there. If you just wanted to see the pictures, then that's I just showed them to you. But if you want to hear more discussion about them, if you want to hear me go through the pictures and talk about them more, then please stay tuned. So yes, these were taken with the Rollei 35. If you've seen some of my previous videos, I've mentioned how I inherited this camera from my grandfather. And it's a lot of fun to use. I really like it. So I've been taking a couple rolls of pictures here and there when I had the chance. This time around, it was another trip I took to Tokyo. I was starting a new job and visiting the head office. So I got two rolls of, let's see, what did I use? This time I used Ilford Super XP2, Ilford XP2 Super 400. So I actually found this in a camera store nearby here. It wasn't too expensive. I think one roll was maybe 1,100 yen, which is maybe $8, $9 at current exchange rates. So I got two rolls of that, knowing that I'd be going to Tokyo. And yeah, I use this with the Rollei 35. And if you've seen the other videos, you know this is the standard Rollei 35. No, it's not the S or the T or any of the later special editions. So let's look at the photos in a little more depth now. I'll go into them one by one, talk about what went well, what didn't, and what I want to try next time. So I should mention I took these all in mid-April. So in Tokyo, that means the cherry blossoms have fallen by that point. It's kind of warming up, but it's still not as hot as it gets in the summer. So this first shot here was in the Nakano area. I think I took a lot of pictures in that area. This was just I tried to find a kind of a narrow street that had stores that looked like they'd been around for a long time. Nothing too recent, which is a bit of a challenge because you're always finding something that looks very modern, but my goal is always to take pictures that look like they could have been taken a long time ago when I'm taking film. So this was just, just a couple of restaurants here. Nothing too interesting, to be quite honest with you. And here was, I think this was the basement of Nakano Broadway. I was looking at some used watch stores in this big department store called Nakano Broadway. And this is a scene. It looked kind of nice in color. It was sort of old, sort of Showa era kind of maybe 70s, 80s style. The lights here were kind of nice, and I was able to expose the black and white film pretty well, but it actually comes off as somewhat uninteresting when the color's removed from it. So despite this being sort of this old-fashioned looking underground in the building here, it wasn't actually that interesting in black and white film. Here were some, this was in it's area called the Koremasa Bridge near Koremasa Station. Because it was in late April, some of the cherry blossoms were kind of in their final throes, as it were, still colorful. And this was kind of nice scenery, but as I've come to recognize, having cherry blossoms with black and white film is almost a little pointless, at least from this far away. And at the same time, on the other side of the bridge, I think right behind this building is Koremasa Station. There's a baseball field that I think probably maybe high school baseball teams are practicing here. I also took some pictures of this with my Sony and with my iPhone actually. So with the color leach from the scene and the players far enough away to where you can't make them out, it still looks like this could have been taken a long time ago. Maybe the somewhat more modern buildings give that away. But I did kind of I did like how this scene turned out in black and white film. And then maybe I'll mention this later, but I kind of wish I had a yellow filter because the sky is blown out here, and I kind of it seems a little amateurish to me to have the completely solid white sky like this, and a filter can help with that. But fortunately, I didn't miss the focus or anything. It was focused far enough away to everything's in relatively matching focus, I would say. It's not super sharp, but pretty good for 35 millimeter film. And one big thing I tried to do this time around was I had a picture from the previous roll I shot in Tokyo. Was that last year? I think maybe last summer, where when you're between buildings, you have these spots of alternating black and alternating shadow and lightness. The sun shining between buildings. And so if you do it well, you can kind of silhouette someone against shadows as they walk out into the bright areas, that kind of gaps between buildings. So I was trying to recreate that a lot this time, but I wasn't very successful with that. You can of course see people, but it's not as profound. I wish I could have done that a little better. But it's a nice effect, but you can't just rely on the lighting itself. You still have to make an interesting composition, find interesting people. So this one was just a little pedestrian, as it were. And this was actually probably my favorite picture of all of them. This was an old building, I think in the Nakano area, called Hotel World with Kaikon. I think in the limited research I've done online, it looks like no one occupies this building anymore, but it's sort of kind of old and decrepit looking. But the architecture looks really good in black and white. In fact, if I ever find this building again, I probably want to go out and photograph it again, just because the shape of the stairwell, is that maybe the stairwell? The shape of that just works really well in black and white, especially maybe this time of day with the sun shining on it and the bikes in shadow there. So I really liked how this one turned out. This was my favorite of these two rolls. So this shot was just at a train station, probably midday, I think maybe Nakano Station. It was slightly underexposed, so it kind of bathes everything in shadow and has this very cool effect, but it was mostly just because I underexposed it. I didn't deliberately go for this effect. I think there was you can see a couple there standing in front of the train. I think they had maybe like a toddler with them, and I was trying to get a shot of all of them together, but it was a little tough. So this one actually turned out very artistic and cool, but through no intention of my own. And this would have been challenging to expose in any case, I suppose, because if I had exposed it more, it probably would have blown out the lighter parts of this image. So maybe this is kind of the limit of what you can get in film. I don't know. And here is probably maybe the same station, maybe another, some nice silhouettes here against the sun and the people waiting for the train. So this was another one. Again, I think I probably was aware of the silhouetting effect, but it turned out better than I thought it would. And another thing I found is when you're trying to get pictures of people when they're just walking across things like these pedestrian crossings, it's important to get them at a good point in their stride. This part was a pretty good one. And this was another one where I was trying to get the people silhouetted against the shadowy parts of the street or something like that. It kind of worked, but again, it wasn't especially profound. Also, I prefer to avoid photographing people, face on, because then it's harder to use the pictures online. So yeah, getting someone from behind walking across the street is tough. Like in this other picture right here, we see people mid-stride. It's kind of interesting, but also a little dull. But this one I got at just the right point. The timing was great, him walking right there. So yeah, that's when you're taking with film, especially, you have your one shot. You hope you get the timing right, and I suppose it's one of those things that requires lots of practice. And yeah, we could see another one here, just much less interesting. So you have to just be ready to get the timing just right. And here was a boy kind of squatting, talking to his friend. It was one of those split-second shots that I was able to get that was a little interesting. Unfortunately, he shadowed enough to where his face is illegible, so a little easier for me to use here. And here was a guy I saw changing his sock at a crosswalk here, but it's a little underexposed, so it's hard to see. It might have been a black sock, but that was one of those moments. You just had to grab it while it was there. And yeah, here's another one. Again, silhouetting across. This was sort of the opposite then. Someone in darkness silhouetting across a light building. Just a mother and her son walking here, and it's like, as much as I wanted to have these sort of profound shots of people going through everyday life, a lot of them came off as slightly dull to me. I think for every one you get that's really interesting, there might be 20 that are just kind of people walking around. I don't know. It's hard to divorce my familiarity with the setting here from what someone might think if they don't live in Japan or haven't been to this area, though. And as I mentioned, yeah, this is in mid-April. This was the cherry blossoms had fallen. I think this is outside Nakano Station, I believe. Yeah, just cherry blossoms, the petals here on the ground. And I think they were probably pink, and they looked nice in color, but fortunately the contrast was high enough to where they, even in black and white, they were visible. And here was another. This is probably my second favorite of the bunch. This is a woman walking her dog, and I kind of realized, yeah, pets are a good subject of photos if you can get them. And of course, a pet isn't going to pose, so you have to capture them at just the right moment. And the last shot I got here, I think I was trying to use up the last of the film, and this was an old couple, probably in their 80s, at the local cafe I was at. So I had the camera with me. I think I was probably trying to use the last couple of shots so I could bring it in and get developed, and get the film developed. And so it was indoors in a dark room in this very old cafe, this kind of old couple that would have been very well suited to black and white film. So I tried to discreetly take their picture. I think I must have opened the aperture pretty wide and gone for a fairly long shutter speed, and Unfortunately, it was either too shaky. I was trying not to be noticed, so I couldn't really hold it steady. And it was too shaky. Might have been opened a little too wide. Although that means there's no danger of anybody recognizing them. So I guess I can put this up here. I wish I had another chance to take this because it would have turned out great. Maybe I should have been brave enough to ask to take their picture. I don't know. But it was a very sort of period appropriate for black and white film. So my takeaways for the two rolls, I thought, first of all, I need to be a little more judicious when I'm taking photos. I had two rolls and I had a limited amount of time. I wasn't able to just devote all of my time to photography here. I was doing quite a lot of other stuff at the same time. So I was walking around. I didn't want to not use the rolls in Tokyo. But one problem is it also leads to some kind of boring shots of just people walking around or the area where I was. That's I don't really use anyway because they're not that interesting. And I'll show a few of them here just to demonstrate this. And yeah, as I mentioned earlier, I don't know how to divorce myself from knowing, okay, this is where I was at, and it's not that exciting or novel to me, versus what other people might think if it's just if they're interested by seeing daily life in Japan. But I feel like I need to, even if I have two roles and I really want to use them up, I should probably be a little more judicious, look for something interesting. And not every shot in every role is going to be a home run, but I do feel like I kind of wasted some of them. And I felt like when I was doing, as doing street photography here again, it really, you sort of looking around your environment a lot. It makes you realize that every moment is very fleeting. Like someone they would probably be in a perfect pose in a perfect position, but you just have that split second where they're in that spot or they're doing something interesting or they don't notice you. And once it's over, it's over. And it really puts you in the moment. It makes you very aware of your environment. And I find that kind of fun, actually. You're not worrying about things. You're just kind of observing and trying to capture something you find interesting. So that part of it's very fun, even if you're not especially successful at it. And as I mentioned on the baseball field pictures, I really think I want to get a yellow filter for the Rollei. I should say I have one for the Minolta because I don't like having that blown out skies. I like some of the Minolta pictures I had with the yellow filter kind of made these very strong blacks that I thought looked very appealing, even if I wasn't actually consciously aiming for them. I think the Rollei has, I want to say, a 24 millimeter filter size. So I believe you can find filters in that size for not a lot of money. So I think by the next time I take the Rollei doing street photography, I'll probably get a yellow filter for it. And another thing, doing two rolls of black and white film again, it is expensive nowadays. The film itself wasn't too expensive, but developing it and then getting it scanned, I want to say altogether for those two rolls is probably something in the range of 60, 70 US dollars. I could maybe get a film scanner if one's cheap enough. That might pay for itself on the scan fee because the scanning was probably the most expensive step actually for two rolls. So, it's kind of funny how film used to be the only thing you could do. And it was cheap because you had the economy of scale of everybody making it and everybody developing it anywhere. But nowadays, compared to digital, you can, one shot costs you the same as 1,000 shots on digital. So I enjoy it, but it's kind of the hassle and expense does mean that I can only do it every now and again. I know there's a lot of people who just do film for the love of it and don't worry about the expense. But I'm also, the other half is that I do a lot of digital photography as well. And in fact, I got a new lens on this trip as well. I got the Tamron 70 to 180 2.8 Generation 2 lens for E-mounts. So if you're familiar with the E-mount lenses, you probably know that lens. And I also did street photography with it. And, the fun thing with that is that the Rollei is at 40 millimeters and the Tamron, can get up to 180. So you can get people on the street much farther away. And in digital, you can convert things to black and white. You can make it look like film if you want to. So on one hand, the Tamron and the Sony are the objectively superior system. Like you give you much more flexibility. You can, get much better focus. You can shoot all day and it doesn't cost you anything. But there's of course the appeal of film as well, letting the film and the camera decide most of it and then you finding out what it looks like later. So I'll show a couple of pictures I took with the Tamron and, I like it a lot. I want to keep using it, but I also want to use the Rollei as well. So while I did have fun, I don't know how often I can do this if it's kind of throwing good money after bad. But I find that, yeah, people, whenever I post anything online, the film always gets way more attention than digital. Maybe it's just because I'm not a very good photographer, or I think it's also because people just enjoy the idea of film and the sort of romantic associations with it nowadays. So I hope everybody liked this. I did enjoy shooting it a lot, and I'll make another video the next time I shoot any more film. So thanks, and see you next time.